Welcome. We're diving into something really interesting today, making clinical trial payments, actually patient-friendly. And we've got some really interesting guidelines from the Global Costing Task Force to help us unpack this.
Yeah, it's interesting. This task force, they're really all about bringing some standards to how we think about the costs of clinical trials. And you know what? This is a really important step.
Absolutely. So they're really focused on, this idea of listening to patients when it comes to actually designing payment
Yeah.
systems, not just, like an afterthought.
It's refreshing, actually,
Sure.
right? They're saying, hey, these patients, they're contributing so much. Let's make sure that the payment side of things, isn't a burden.
Yeah, because, it seems obvious, but, it's probably more than just asking, hey, were you happy with your payment on a scale of 1 to 5?
Right?
What are they actually suggesting?
It's way more nuanced than that. So they advocate for really specific feedback. Like, instead of just assuming everyone wants a check, they're suggesting, well, maybe ask about mobile apps or prepaid cards or, even direct bank transfers. It's about tailoring the approach.
Oh, wow. So really getting into the weeds, like, did you even understand how this whole payment thing worked? Was it easy for you to, access your money?
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about, did the patient actually understand the process? Were those transactions happening quickly enough? And was the entire system, was it easy to navigate? These details, they might seem small, but they can make a world of difference to a patient.
Absolutely. And so how do they recommend actually getting this really specific feedback from patients?
Well, they're not married to just one method, which I think is smart. They suggest a blend of, maybe traditional surveys, but also, hey, let's have some in-depth interviews or even focus groups, where patients can kind of bounce ideas off each other.
That makes sense. Get a range of perspectives, different comfort levels.
Exactly. And that's key because, you're going to have people who are comfortable, with technology and filling out things online.
Mm.
But some people, might prefer a phone call. So offering different avenues, I think, is really crucial.
Yeah. And I imagine this is doubly important when you're trying to make a payment system that really is inclusive for all patients.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. The task force, they emphasize that inclusivity has to be baked in from the get-go. And that means, thinking about people of all ages, different comfort levels with technology. And you know what? Even cultural preferences, those can play a role in how people prefer to receive payments.
Wow. That's a really important point about inclusivity. I imagine that could be pretty complex to navigate, right?
It can be.
Mm.
And I think the task force recognizes that. They bring up things like language barriers. So, for example, if you're conducting a trial that involves patients who speak different languages, does the system accommodate that? Are there translations available?
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense.
And then you've got varying levels of access to technology. Not everyone has a smartphone, so can someone, for instance, navigate the system easily without one? And then there are different comfort levels, right? With online banking and mobile payments. Some people, are very comfortable with technology, and some people prefer that face-to-face interaction.
So it sounds like the task force is really encouraging clinical trial organizers to sort of think outside the box when it comes to these payment systems, huh?
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond those one-size-fits-all solutions. And at its core, it's about action, right? It's great to gather data, but the real magic happens when you actually use that data, those patient voices, to make real, tangible improvements. That's what patient centricity really means in action.
Yeah, it's not enough to just check the box and say you asked.
Exactly. It's about listening and then actually implementing changes based on what you hear.
This has been a really interesting deep dive. I think for me, the big takeaway is that we really do need to uh, be a lot more thoughtful about how we design these payment systems. It's not just about getting the money to the patient. It's about, the whole experience and making sure that that process is easy and as stress-free as possible.
I completely agree. And it makes you wonder, if we can apply this very patient-centric approach to payments, what other parts of the clinical trial experience could benefit from, that same level of attention, that same level of really listening to the patient's voice.
That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.